Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be diving in and kind of, I guess, raising some concerns about the future of Bannerlord modding when it comes to the development of DLC. And don't worry if you guys are like, Jackie, get back to the mods, you've been talking about this stuff and we haven't seen gameplay in a while. Don't worry, this week I will be going back to covering mods and stuff, but I really wanted to, and I think it's important to kind of bring up this discussion point because, again, it's not something I really thought about until I saw it being talked about in the modders Discord channel. And again, I am extremely excited for War Sales. I think the DLC looks amazing. The naval combat actually looks like it has some depth to it, which is awesome. The expanded map of Calradia looks really, really good. And then on top of that, all the free updates as well, like the stealth mechanics seem amazing. The extra bonuses to like the reworks to towns and city projects looks good. And there's plenty more with the free updates that I'm very excited for. However, I think this is an important discussion, and I think this is something that Tale Worlds hopefully will address, and I'm hopefully something they'll address for the better now that we're getting a bit more communication from them in the lead up to War Sales and hopefully off into the future DLCs. But the main crux of the problem is that, you know, if modders, for example, so let's say War Sales releases is awesome, the naval mechanics are a must use in Bannerlord, that's very, very cool, and let's take, for example, Eagle Rising as a mod, probably one of Bannerlord's best and biggest mods, you know, out there. It's a mod that people have been playing for literally years. Well, and again, they haven't said, Eagle Rising team haven't said anything about this is just all speculation, but let's say they're like, oh yeah, the War Sales DLC looks incredible, that looks so good, all the naval ships, I can't wait to implement like a Rome versus Carthage, Second Punic War, naval battles between factions, that looks really good. Well, let's say they implement it and they bring in custom assets and stuff into the game. Well, previously, I was loving Eagle Rising, but maybe I don't have a ton of money and I can't afford War Sales. Well, now is Eagle Rising, am I unable to play Eagle Rising because I don't own War Sales because it has the naval mechanics in? And I think that's something that can be brought up with basically every single mod out there. I think most modders are licking their lips and being like, yeah, this would be awesome to implement into our mod. It looks amazing. And I really, you know, like, I think that's a great thing, right? This is a very cool mechanic and it looks like it's been worked on pretty heavily. Again, until we see some gameplay, we don't know, but it seems like it's going to be a must add in most mods. Is that going to basically cause like the own cannibalization of modding? You know, if you can't afford this DLC, are you going to be in trouble and not be able to play your favorite mods anymore? And I think it's unrealistic to expect modders to keep up two versions of the game when they spend all the time and effort in bringing it into their mod in the first place. You know, I think it's probably unlikely that they're going to be able to then keep up two versions. Some modders might, but as I said, I think it's unrealistic and unfair to expect that of them, because again, what happens when another DLC comes and that implements new features? So it's definitely like, yeah, a concerning thing that mods might all of a sudden be locked behind a paywall in the sense that you have to own the DLC to actually be able to play it. And again, that's nothing like new, it's nothing crazy. I know there's a handful of Total War mods that you need to have, like Age of Charlemagne, for example, to actually play certain mods, but it is still kind of concerning, you know, again, and hopefully this is just the first DLC going forward. Now, again, speaking of that, there are games out there like Crusader Kings, like a lot of Paradox games do a very, very good job of not forcing you to own, like, it basically just like turns off the content for the game. You know, if you don't own you know, No Step Back, you just don't have the supply mechanic in Hearts of Iron, for example, and a lot of mods just kind of like, you know, again, you just don't, it's just a feature you just don't have to worry about and you can continue to play the mod like you want to play it. But again, that's all on one map, the same game, you know, that they implement that in, whereas War Sales is going to be different. So how I imagine, again, I don't know, this is all speculation, but because we're getting a map expansion and because we're getting a reimagined Calradia, I expect War Sales to basically be a separate module. And again, I could be completely wrong here and they could bring it in, but I imagine vanilla players will just be getting the default Calradia map. You know, they won't get any of the expansion or the reworked maps. If you don't own the War Sales DLC, you're basically, if we go to the Bannerlord menu right now, you'll just have like this sandbox. You'll click it normally, you'll load up the vanilla Calradia map and you'll just be playing it. Whereas if you own War Sales, there'll probably be another module below sandbox or something along them lines that says War Sales, and you click it, it brings you into War Sales, and you have the new custom map with the map expansions. Because again, it's not just like War Sales just has the normal Calradium map, it has a reimagined Calradium map. So again, I believe they've moved around a lot of the settlements, they've added in more coastal areas, they've changed like where factions own certain lands, and again, all of a sudden that changes kind of the parameters of the game. And as I keep on mentioning, I could be completely wrong here, this is just speculation, but they could, if they wanted to, I guess, maybe update the vanilla map. So just the sandbox map in general is the new reimagined Calradia with just like the new lands not there. Like the new lands are just kind of there, but they're blocked out. There's no land there, there's no castles there, there's no new faction. And then all of a sudden, something like that, I guess, could work along with something like that could work with like the Paradox style of DLC. You know, it's the same setup and nothing's like locked in. But yeah, I imagine it's going to be like for War Sales, you'll click War Sales and it'll bring you into that environment. And that means that all the mechanics are going to be locked inside of that module, and it's not like modders can like tear that stuff out and then implement it into a vanilla based game, because I imagine that's very, very, very against terms of service. But I think realistically, at the end of the day, it is just a communication thing. And I hope the Tailworlds have taken the time and effort, if it's possible, to make it as easy for modders to implement these new features and not take it out. Like we mentioned earlier about the Eagle Rising, Punic War, naval combat would be really cool. So again, if we were to apply that Paradox method to Bannerlord, let's say you load up into your modded version of Eagle Rising, you dive into the game and you don't own War Sales. Well, maybe all of a sudden there's just no naval stuff there. Like obviously you don't own the mechanics, you don't own the naval combat. Well, hopefully it's a very easy and simple way of just like the game files checking, like do you own this? Do you own this? No, you don't. Okay, cool. Then you just can't utilize these mechanics in game. If you go to a city and there's no harbor there, there's no way to buy ships, there's no way to go onto the sea, so then mechanics are just completely shut off. And vice versa, if you do own War Sales, again, the game checks when you load it up for the first time. Do you own War Sales? Yes, you do. Okay, cool. You now have access to the harbor. You can now buy ships. You can now set sail. And I think honestly, realistically, that would be like absolutely amazing. That would stop the games from being cannibalized. Again, you wouldn't have access to these awesome modded features that the modders bring in, but also, you know, like still then be able to play the mod and not have to worry about there being two versions, or not have to worry about, you know, not being able to utilize the DLC. But then I think it brings into a gray area, because what if it's like an offshoot? What happens if modders make like something off of the DLC, and then like how does that work when the game reads you? So that's why I think it's just not going to be the case, and you either are going to be able to utilize the mechanics off of War Sales, or you're just not going to be able to play the mod. That's how I imagine it works. Realistically, we need more communication from Tailworlds. We need to kind of know beforehand, I think, so modders can prep for it. And I think it's quite important they talk about it, whether it's good or bad. You know, again, Tailworlds, I guess, is bad to say, but I guess they don't owe us anything when it does come to that, even though I guess people argue that they do, because mods have kept the game alive for the past 2 years. But I think it's an extremely, extremely important issue, and I think hopefully Tailworlds have taken the time, if possible, to make it as easy as possible for modders to utilize the War Sales mechanic, because again, you know, this isn't an awesome DLC, and I want to see it flourish inside of the mods. I'm very scared that it will be, will be cannibalized, and it will just hurt mods and, you know, put pressure on them, and people will get annoyed. Again, I guess it also depends on how expensive War Sales is. You know, if War Sales is like $20, then, you know, again, it's like, you know, it's not really that big of a deal. And obviously $20 is a lot of money to people. But again, you know, it's like, I think there's a big difference between if it's a $20 DLC or a $40 DLC, for example. And I'm hoping it's the first one. Again, I think this does just come back to the main crux of communication. We have had basically a media blackout for the past 2 years with the failed DLC, and I imagine there was just a lot of turmoil at Tailworlds because of that failed DLC. But I'm hoping that they're really taking the time to turn a new leaf, really get back to being communicating, because that's so important. You know, stuff like the Japan mod, they spent 2.5 years, I think, coding in their own naval system, and I'm sure a lot of them are very demotivated activated now. Again, I'm sure their naval system is amazing. They might just kind of go forward with that rather than implementing war sails, the war sails naval combat to it, because, they're amazing and I'm sure they've done a really good job. But, maybe a little bit of communication could have, like, hinted at it, or, I don't know, could have saved them time. They could have spent that effort elsewhere, I'm not saying that, Tailworlds have to release their DLC plans and the mechanics, a year or two in advance, I don't know. I feel like there could have just been a little bit of a, I don't know. It's hard, right? Because, Tailworlds don't, wouldn't just, it's a company, it's not just going to release its DLC plans, but it definitely sucks, and I think more communication could have definitely have helped that. But that's going to basically wrap it up for the video. I don't want to, I don't want this to be a super negative video, but I think it's an important conversation we need to bring up, and hopefully it's a conversation that Tailworlds have been thinking about and how it's going to implement. Ideally, the paradox system would be amazing, where it just kind of the game reads when you load it. Do you have these DLC? No. Okay, then mechanics are just kind of shelved to one side. I don't think it's going to be the case, so I think it's going to be one or the other, and that could lead to some really horrible situations where you just can't play your favorite mods because you don't own a DLC, right? That would suck and will suck as well. But we'll have to see. Again, only time will tell, and hopefully closer to launch, Tailworlds maybe come out and talk about it a little bit more. But let me know what you guys think of this down below in the comments. Do you think that it's going to be one way or another? And yeah, we'll be back with some more Lord of the Rings mod tomorrow. It recently received a massive update, so make sure you hit the like button down below and obviously subscribe if you haven't already. Again, I'll be covering war sales, all the new information may drop, any new blog posts, any new gameplay, I'll be sure to cover. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.